you shouldn't call yourself a half-ass witch because you shouldn't be like half-assing your craft. And I'm like, dude, it's not like that. Like, it's really not it. But it's a more approachable thing, and that's what I love about witchcraft, is I feel like it is so approachable. Even with like chaos magic, a lot of people, because there's the word chaos attached to it, feel like you've done no work. It's just like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And it's like, that's kind of the opposite of what it is. Especially for such a long time, I knew I could talk to dead people, and I would tell people, like, I'm not doing it, I don't want to do that. When I started doing healings and when I started connecting people to their dead relatives and even people or gods and guides that they didn't know, that was just, to me, more emotionally and energetically impactful. I am one of those people in the mindset of just try it, wing it, and it'll come out the way it's supposed to come out. So that's how I do a lot of my magic, is people think I'm just winging it, but really what it is I kind of just let my body go on autopilot and do. I remember towards the end of like my senior year, I was so depressed that I was like drinking at school. I don't think anyone in my life at one point ever knew like how much I had done it and how much it actually was impacting my life. I think people just thought I was being stupid, like a stupid kid, and like making bad mistakes. And it was drugs. Like, that's what it was. I don't ever go a day where I don't remember that I did that. I don't ever go a day where, like, sometimes even I'll look at like a bottle of wine and I'm like, do I want that, or do I just, am I bored?
Welcome everyone to this interview with Teejay Zeigler, also known as the Halfass Witch. You probably know her face. She's all over Instagram, everywhere. And to give you a little taste of what we're going to be talking about today, we're probably going to cover topics like past life explorations, struggling with addiction, chaos magic, shadow work, and also how Teejay recently gave her work a new direction, how she's evolving with her business. We've been online friends for quite a while now. I actually don't know how long, probably a year or so we started following each other.
I feel like, yeah, I think it's been about like I think it might be more than a year though. Yeah. Like, I feel like I remember seeing your stuff around probably close to when I started my business, which was 2 years ago. So probably, yeah, around that like 1.5 year mark, most likely. That's a long time. I feel like it's been the blink of an eye. That's so crazy.
Yeah, like with online friendships, they always feel shorter than they actually are. But actually, I think it's been quite a while. And I knew when I found you, your Instagram content and everything, like I knew immediately that I would like you because you have that really cool alchemical combo of like really deep quality content and aesthetics, That's like the best combination. That's the best combination. So yeah, you bring that to the table. So before your tattoos look so nice. Anyways, that was like,
I feel like Miley Cyrus sometimes. I'm just like, hey everyone, like that obnoxious, yeah. Like, everyone look at my tattoo.
So before I set the stage with a little bio, how are you doing? How are you today?
Today is really good. You ever just like wake up in the morning and you're like, this isn't the worst day ever. That's how I felt this morning. I woke up and I had pretty decent sleep. I've been really excited recently because I've been like waking up earlier. And like, from like, if you run your own business, basically you can wake up whenever the heck you want because like you can set your schedule. But this whole situation has kind of taught me that like, just because I can wake up at noon doesn't mean I maybe should, or even that I like it. Like, just because I can doesn't even mean that I want to.
Yeah.
And get caught up in that of like, I can do it. Like, right. Like I can have ice cream for breakfast and then you have it and you're like, I don't want it. Like, that did nothing for me. That's not helpful. So yeah, no, today has been really, really good because I'm starting to get into more of a, I feel like an adult routine, like a routine that's real and like functional. So it's really nice. So yeah, I'm having a decent day. And I get to talk to you.
Yeah, I get to talk to you. That is like the highlight of my day today. It's almost over and it's going to be the highlight for 100%. I love it. Okay, so let's get that little bio in so everyone is updated on who you are, what you do. So you've come a pretty long way. You came to the US from Vietnam as a child. You were adopted into a Christian family, and you actually became a Sunday school teacher. That was something that I found very interesting about you.
Yeah, people really don't, like, every time people find that out, they're just like,
Yeah, and today you basically do full-time work relating to past lives, to ancestral healing, psychic work as a witch, and you also have really serious graphic design skills that always show in your, it's fine, you can adjust the camera if you need.
Sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, it's really awesome. And you know, it feels like you've come a really long way from that Christian background, now doing spiritual labor full time. And there's a lot of cool interviews with you and, you know, content about you talking about this, like your past, how you came here. And that's why with this interview, I really want to take it more into the current times and kind of get a snapshot of what it's like today. I'm going to link some of the interviews that are more like about your childhood, etc., down below so people can look at that as well. So let's give people a bit of an idea what your practice looks like. Like many of us, you know, in the witchcraft community, in the spiritual community, there's a lot of labels flying around. And I like to ask people what labels actually they feel apply to them. So looking at the labels that you've used in the past to describe yourself, maybe you can just relate to them, tell me if they're still valid, or if you're like, not so much. So you've called yourself a chaos witch, a storm witch, Norse Kemetic pagan, and currently Hagzissa, if that's how you pronounce it. I should know how to pronounce it because I'm German, but I don't. So
girl, I'm a Norse pagan, and half the time I'm like, I'm not saying this. Like, no, not even trying. No, I've had a lot of like labels or I guess like names or whatever, like classifications as a witch. And I think that at the end of the day, you know, I just really identify as like a witch. That's kind of all it is, because when you get into like labels and stuff, it's like you get one label, and then especially with witchcraft, because there's so many different sub branches of things, it's like you have to label the label and then find like the sub label, and I'm just like, dude, that's a waste of time. Like, it's just so much effort. And yeah, like you said, like some of my old labels aren't valid anymore, like they just don't fit. So like chaos witch, yes, kind of, because for me chaos magic is like, of course, it's like the release of dogma, and it's using what's available to you based on like your ethical standpoint, whatever, right? Like if it's a closed culture, technically it's not available to you. But that is kind of something that I used to do, and I still do like little bits of chaos magic. But I think that like the word chaos, sometimes people find that not off-putting, but it just feels like there's a lack of order. Or even with like chaos magic, which is one of, I think, the practices that requires the most research, like one of the ones that requires like the most actual learning and like book work and stuff. A lot of people, because there's the word chaos attached to it, feel like you've done no work. It's just like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And it's like, that's kind of the opposite of what it is, because you have to know at least enough of what you're doing to be able to do it. You have to know a little bit about everything. So at one point I did resonate with that, because I do a little bit of essentially everything. I can pretty much, I don't want to like toot my own horn, you know what I mean? But like usually the things that I pick up on, I'm very good at. Now, obviously there's a spectrum of like how good I am at it. Like I might be like, you know, decently good, and I might be like the same as like, I don't know, like fucking Martha Stewart about other things, right? Like it's different. But yeah, chaos magic, not so much. I don't really apply the term of like storm witch anymore, because I do storm magic, but actually mostly what it is it's like electrical witch. I mostly kind of resonate with like lightning and thunder and those types of things, since I am a pagan, and that's kind of what we deal with a lot. So electricity is one of the things that me as a human being and like as a spiritual being is like affected the most. So I've turned off like the lights in a full Starbucks before, and the girl I was with isn't my friend anymore, because she was like so scared. And I was kind of like, I get it. If I was with you and like someone's lights turned off, I'd be like, I'm gonna leave now. We're not doing that. But yeah, so I think that at the end of the day, just applying witch to it, you know, spiritual practitioner or whatever, I think for me is fine. I recently stepped into the role of like educational priestess, and kind of stepped into those old roles in the old kind of lifetimes that I've lived, and started doing more educating and started doing more coaching and teaching, which is something that I love, because I have a background in education. My entire family, other than loving Jesus a lot, they have also all been in the educational like system. Everybody's been a teacher or a principal or something. So education is something that I love. So like teacher, like spiritual teacher, is something that I like. But I don't like the labels like guru. I don't like when people label me like a spiritual authority or whatever, which doesn't happen a lot, but there are some people that like are newer to our community that see me as like a reference point for research, which I think is completely fine. Like, use me as like a landing board or whatever, you know, as a jumping off point. But I don't want to be anyone's like end all be all like source of information. I'm a human being and like I make mistakes, and sometimes I have to go back in my own research and be like, that was wrong. And so I don't want to be the person to be like, this is how you do it only. Like, yeah, no, I like calling myself a witch, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah, that's good. And I think, you know, in your content, you also put a lot of emphasis on making clear that everyone sort of has to find their own way and their own path. And I think that helps a lot with not being seen as the one iconic person that everyone has to follow. If you don't act like you are just speaking the truth, then people will hopefully understand that and see you as a normal person, you know, having practice and sharing. Yeah.
That's why I try and keep my stuff, like, I actually really like the Halfass Witch. I've had a lot of people who are like a little bit more serious about their craft. And it's not that I'm not serious, obviously, but like people who are a little bit more sticklers for things and for the label and everything. And they'll kind of get on me and be like, you shouldn't call yourself a Halfass Witch because you shouldn't be like half-assing your craft. And I'm like, dude, it's not like that. Like, it's really not it. But it's a more approachable thing, and that's what I love about witchcraft is I feel like it is so approachable, and I don't feel like we should be limited. I don't think communication should limit whatever it is that we want to do. Like, I don't think a word or whatever. So that's actually why I picked Halfass, which is how I pronounce it, but it might be wrong. So like, we're just gonna put that out in a blanket statement. Because essentially what that is, it's a hedge witch. It's the like Celtic word for hedge witch. But I don't like the word hedge witch, one, because the first time I ever heard it, I felt like I was like, I'm not green witch, which for some reason I thought they were the same thing because I thought about bushes and I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Same for me, actually. Yeah. I was
really?
like, oh, a hedge. I know hedges.
I was like, I'm not a gardener, so like I can't do that. But no, I think that like really the way to sum up my craft and to sum up the way that I work even and the way that my spiritual stuff is it is kind of on the edge there. It really is. I wouldn't call myself a hedge witch just because I'm not on the edge of everything. But I live in between so many different things, so many different realms. Like, I don't even just talk to like dead people. Like, I talk to the gods and I talk to angels. Like, I've had a full-on conversation with like Mary and whatever. So like, I even move between religions. I move in between my own like culture genetically and then my culture that I was raised in. Like, I can't put myself in one box. So I stay in that liminal space, which is why I picked that word, because my home really truly is like Norse paganism. And this is the thing I love about Sagittarius is that people say that we're the traveler, right? We love to go everywhere, but we always need a home. You always need a home base as a Sagittarian, because then you're not a traveler, you're like a hobo. Then you're just like wandering and you have no like place to come back to. So that was like my thing, to be like, this is my home and this is kind of where I come from as my home base, but it's still the word that says like, I'm just everywhere. And I like that.
I like that a lot. That's awesome. So speaking of the whole Sagittarius thing, the fun thing is that, you know, Kellyanne that I spoke to, Kellyanne Maddox, she's also a Sagittarius. I'm an Aries, and I feel like I'm just interviewing fire people now. It's very funny. And as I was exploring, kind of researching you and everything, I saw an interview that you did with the Hype Priestess. Shout out to her.
We love her. We love you, Lacey.
And it turns out that you have the same soul card as me, which is the Chariot, right? Like you said, your life card was the Chariot, I suppose.
I think it is. Yeah. I don't remember actually. Well, and here's the thing too, is that that's calculated with your birthday, right? And like, so I used for that one my Vietnamese birthday, but my American birthday is different by a month and a year. So I have two different charts. I have two different soul cards. So I have two different life path numbers. Everything that everyone has, I have two sets. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it gets confusing sometimes, but it's actually extra helpful because I have extra things to like draw from for information. But yeah, no, the Chariot is, and what's also really funny is when I first started doing all of this, I was like, because I don't love cancers. I was like, oh my God.
Same.
Why?
Same.
Yeah, but later on we looked at my American birth chart and I'm a Cancer moon and I was like, fuck. Throw
Well,
the
that's
whole
done.
chart away.
Yeah, for me, I think I don't associate it with Cancer all that much. It's mostly that intensity and the alignment of willpower and action that I think
Yeah.
of with the chariot, and also the problematic aspect of being a little bit overwhelming sometimes and, driving over people, basically.
Yeah, or sometimes being just a little bit out of control. And
Yeah.
it's like, sometimes we need a little bit of that. I love the chariot because it's, for me as a Sagittarian and for me as like an action oriented person, it's like I need forward movement. My worst
Yeah.
nightmare is being stuck anywhere. Like I'm even like mildly claustrophobic, so I don't even want to be physically stuck in a place, let
Yeah.
alone like energetically or emotionally or whatever. So the chariot, when I realized that, I was like, yeah, that checks out. I'm not confused by that in any way.
Yeah. Yeah, and sort of relating to that, I feel like, on your Instagram and all of that, you're very effortlessly honest in a way and come across as very self-confident, very empowered in your craft and having a lot of self-trust,
I'm like, who
Of
is she?
course. Is this news to you?
Yeah, I'm like, who?
So I was going to this is like one of the questions I wanted to ask that sort of relate to your childhood, which is that often when people are raised in a Christian household or in kind of within Christian dogma, they really struggle with it leaving certain traces in their mind, makes it hard for them to be confident in their path, in their craft, if they decide to become a witch. And I feel like there's like this natural element of rebellion within you. And I'm wondering, oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'm wondering,
for sure.
and I'm wondering if you feel like that's an advantage or has that ever been a disadvantage for you? How do you feel about that?
When you asked, or when you sent me the list of questions, this is one of my favorite questions. I was like, oh, I love that because it made me think about myself. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, oh wait. You know what? It's been good. It's been good and bad because the advantages of that are like, I am not the person to be silenced. So the minute you tell me like, please don't say that, I'm like, oh, I'm saying it. I'm saying it like extra loud. Now I'm going to bold it and underline it for you and then mail it to you and be like, look, I said it. Which is fine in certain situations, right? When you're speaking out and you're trying to be an activist and you're really trying to inspire or lead or even just kind of get the truth out. It's been a struggle, obviously, with people who are uncomfortable with their own independence and with their own voice because, people project that and that's kind of been an issue. The only time it's really, really been a problem is when it gets personal for me. The last thing that I've ever wanted was to be trapped. Like I told you, like I hate being trapped. And like vocally, that's the worst. My throat chakra is one of my power centers. Like out of all my chakras, like my throat is one of the ones where most of my power comes from. So obviously when that gets shut down by external sources, like it's the worst thing ever for me. So sometimes, and I say this a lot, even on my page, where you feel like, if you feel like you're not being listened to, like when people are like, oh, why is everyone going crazy or whatever, I always say that if people don't feel like they're being listened to, what do? They get louder. And so for me, when I've tried to be rebellious or independent and I was stifled, I would just get louder because I didn't know how to do it tactfully. I didn't know how to take that rebellion and like channel it like the right way with like the right words and the right attitude. And for a very long time growing up, it came out as angry. It was anger, really, is a lot of what it is. And and then the Christian upbringing didn't help because it is very much like I heard this the other day and I was like, oh my god, this is so real. Because in Christianity and organized Christian religion, essentially, if you are not feeling like you're guilty, then you're not doing it right. Like if you're not constantly asking for God to forgive you, you're not doing it right. And for a while I was just like, should I feel guilty about everything? Like I was like, what is this? And so it was always like dedication and discipline and discipline in the way of like what you can't have and what you can't do and whatever. And as a naturally rebellious person, that was the last place I needed to be. And so that kind of gave me about 20 years of conditioning to being quiet and to having to like swallow it and deal with it. And like it translated to my family too, because my family was the pastor's family. And so the way that my family worked was kind of the way the church worked, which was like, okay, just keep your problems quiet so everybody can like get along and we're going to play the game and whatever. And even also with like white families, and especially where I live, everything is very loyalty based. It's very like, and as a Scorpio Venus, I don't have a problem with loyalty, but when it's deserved, and obviously in certain situations it's not. So that was kind of an issue with that rebellion, when I was rebelling against people who didn't see my rebellion as like a good thing, or didn't understand that it needed to be channeled the right way. It wasn't like, and this is something I see in parents, and when I was working at schools, I would see it too, is that negative behavior always comes from somewhere. And if you fix that issue, or if you find a way to at least get to the core of it, then the negative behavior can be managed or be redirected. And when I was younger, it was only seen as negative, and there was no redirection other than just stopping. There wasn't like a different channel or a different way to get it out. It was just stop. And so now in like not late adulthood, but like now in my late 20s or like mid 20s or whatever, I'm a better, I've got a better handle on it. But yeah, it took at least probably until, I want to say like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, till I felt fully comfortable to just tell everyone to fuck off and do whatever I wanted. And even now, every once in a while, I'll do things and I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to rock the boat, I don't want to mess with anyone. And then I'm like, do I not forget, like, do I remember who I am for the whole, like, I don't want to rock the boat thing? And then I'm like, dude, I was the first person in my community to openly and professionally be a spiritual practitioner outside of like Christianity. And this is in a county of like 8 towns. And it's just me now. Or it was at first. Now there's like more people, because I don't want to, again, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I was the first one, and I was the one to be like, look, you guys, like, I'll take the brunt of whatever, because I know I'm a strong person, and I've gotten so many, my life has been full of differing opinions, and my life has been full of like people kind of coming against what I have to say. So I was like, look, if I got to be the first person to do it so that you guys can deal with it with a little less negativity, like, I'll be the guy, I'll be the person to do it. So it's been a good thing and a bad thing, but overall, here we are. So it's not the worst.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking about this in my own way as well, because I had that sort of anger within me as well, or that sort of intensity. And it made me think of the 7 of Wands. I've been working on that recently, because with the 7 of Wands, you are kind of permanently in this sort of defensive attitude that you get put in if you have had a lot of resistance coming at you. And then sometimes you're intense even though there is no resistance to you, but you still have this intense reaction, or this feeling that you have to defend your position even if you're not getting attacked. Yeah. So that's also related. Let's talk about your spiritual work a little bit. So as a spiritual worker, as a spiritual worker, what would you say was one of the biggest shadows that you've had to overcome? Like, for example, being, too pushy with your advice, or assuming too much about people, or bringing too much of your own issues to the reading if you read tarot for people, stuff like that.
You know what, one of my first issues really was, and I think this is so funny, because people come to me and ask me like, oh my God, I feel like you've been doing this forever or whatever. And you've always known, like, that whole, when people are like, oh, I've always known that I'm a whatever. And like, I've always known I got some weird stuff going on, but I couldn't be like, yeah, I've always known I was a witch. But like, yeah, that was one of my issues, was me going like, can I actually do this? Like, is this a thing? Like, is this a thing that I do? When I would get like downloads and stuff, the very first thing was, sometimes I would go, okay, is this my already, like, the information I already know? Because when I first started reading tarot, I was reading free, and I was asking my friends first, obviously, because I was like, okay, I know you, like, I know you're not gonna think I'm like worshiping Satan or whatever the fuck, so let's do this. And so it was kind of weird for me to read people I sort of knew, because I was like, okay, if what I'm reading, is this actually what I'm downloading? Or is this because I know what's kind of going on in your life? Or like, I know what your parents are like, or I know your baseline personality or whatever. So then I had to start reading strangers, and that kind of made it a little bit better. But even every once in a while, I would say things, and I would always give my own disclaimers of like, this is what I'm seeing, but I could be totally wrong and blah, blah, blah. And I had to stop doing that, because usually it was when things came out of left field. So if I would like read, like if I would do like a ancestor communication or something, and for some reason I was like tuning into someone's grandma, but I smelled like heavy tobacco, or like heavy, like male scents, or even like heavy alcohol. I'm like, I don't know if this is real. And I'll tell them, I'm like, I smell this. And they're like, oh my God, that's like, she was so obsessed with that or whatever. And I'm like, well, your grandma was like a party animal. All right. But yeah, it's stuff like that. But I was, crap, I don't know. I don't want to say I've never brought my own issues into a reading, because what I'll do is like use whatever's going on in my life to explain to my clients, like, okay, this is kind of how it looks or whatever. Like, let's give you an example outside of your life so that you aren't so personally connected to it. But generally I'm pretty good at, like, this is awful to say, I'm pretty good at disassociation. Like, I'm pretty good at being like, whatever, I don't, who am I? So that's never been the biggest issue, but yeah, it was always like trusting what I got if it didn't really make sense. And it was also kind of the fear of my own gifts and like my own things, like, especially for such a long time, I knew I could talk to dead people, and I would tell people, like, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to see them. I don't, whatever. Yeah. And I was really underestimating my own ability to control that. And I was underestimating my own ability of, like, obviously that wouldn't be something I could do, like, as a gift if I wasn't supposed to, like, use it. So that was like I went back and forth on that for a really long time, because I was just like, okay, this is when we're really getting into stuff, right? Doing energy and crystals and tarot card readings is cool. But then when you start talking to dead people, like, that's a different thing. And it's kind of like, that was when I had to make the transition to full witch. And I was like, okay, I'm going to really commit to this now. Like, I talk to dead people, so where there's no going back after that.
Yeah. And, you know, that's also something I want to talk about, because you officially started your business a few years ago. And I wanted to check in with you on that, like, on how you feel about it. And before the interview, you actually told me that you're kind of transitioning away from calling yourself a tarot reader towards doing more of that psychic side of things, working with ancestors, with past lives. And maybe you can go into more detail about how that change came about and what that was like for you.
So I always know when I'm not supposed to be doing something anymore, because I get bored with it, or I just don't, like, I don't have it in my body to do it. For such a long time, I was a graphic and web designer and, like, a marketer in advertising. And eventually it just became such a chore to, like, get on my computer and do it. And I'm good at it. It doesn't really take a ton of effort, but I was like, I hate this. Like, I don't want to do this. This makes me not want to touch a computer ever again. So I kind of, for a while, actually very shortly after I got into, like, my business full time, the year mark about, I wasn't in it with the tarot. I was like, God, I don't, like, I felt like, it's not that there was no substance, but I just wanted to take a little bit more of an active role in helping people and in healing people. I didn't like that I would give people advice or whatever, and after that it was up to them to improve their lives or whatever. And I don't like to claim my Cancer moon, but I do, because I genuinely just want to take care of everyone. Like, I want to be everyone's mom, essentially. And it is, like, kind of that mom thing of, like, I want to give you advice and I want you so bad to, like, listen to it, because I can see your potential. So it was a little bit of that. I'm really empathetic, and I really feel for people, which is so funny, because people don't generally know that about me. They're like, oh, you're kind of cold and a little standoffish, which I am, but that's my Scorpio rising. So once you get in, like, you're in. And so I really just want to take care of everybody. And tarot wasn't giving me that opportunity. It was giving me the opportunity to coach people and give them what I could in terms of, like, verbal motivation or whatever. But when I started doing healings, and when I started connecting people to their dead relatives, and even people or gods and guides that they didn't know, that was just, to me, more emotionally and energetically impactful. And I felt like it was a better use of my gifts too, like, to fully use my energy and my power to make a little bit more of a significant change, like, in real time, instead of, like, having to wait for people to, like, change their lifestyles or whatever. And I just remember how difficult things were before I knew how to do all this for myself. And I want to be able to give people the tools to do that. So, you know, obviously, like, they can get a head start on it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I still want to talk about tarot for a minute anyways.
Yeah, no, I still love tarot. I love doing it, but tarot's cool, but also, like, seeing people's chakras is really cool. So I think I love
So something you said once that I saw that I really liked is that tarot can be used as sort of a directory to show you how you can work on a certain issue, whether, you know, it's an emotional thing, it's a physical thing, or an ancestral thing. And I really like that approach. And I'm wondering, going beyond, you know, just using it for self-reflection, using it for self-development, but using it in a more practical way, how do you use tarot privately at the moment? Like, I mean, for something like kind of grounded, like career things, dating, relationship, that sort of stuff.
Well, for my job, I usually, when I feel like things need to change or when things are a little bit slow or whatever, I kind of ask like what I need to do with my business. A lot of the times I get the 10 of Wands reverse, which is like, stop doing everything. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So that's usually, when I get that, that's usually when I cut my menu down. That's usually when I raise my prices a little bit. That's kind of how I use that practically. In terms of my relationships with anybody, usually I'm very, I wouldn't call myself like an empath because I think everyone can kind of feel emotions generally. But I can tell when something's hinky and weird, and I'm like, oh, our relationship is, I don't know, communication's been a little different. I read like small little cues and stuff like that. So whenever that happens, I'll bust out my tarot decks and be like, okay, what's our issue? Like, what's going on? And it's never for me like what's gonna happen, because I don't care about that. Like, all I can really do is change it right now. So like, let's just do it now. I don't care what's going to happen in 3 days or whatever, because if I don't do anything right now, that's not going to be what I want. I will kind of see like what the issue, whatever blockage is in the relationship or in communication, and then I'll see like what ways we can fix it. I always ask the tarot, whoever it is that I'm reading about, like the other person in this relationship, I always ask like, okay, what do they need from me? What do they not like? What do I need to back off of? I do that a lot with like my romantic relationships, where I go, okay, because I know myself, and like it's that Chariot where I'm like, let's go full force, like let's get married tomorrow. And also like I am an overbearing personality. I can push because I like to be motivated and whatever, and sometimes I can roll people over on accident. So I always try and like catch myself before I do that, or I try and back off. So like the other day I pulled and I was like, oh, what does my boyfriend need from me today or whatever, and I got like the what was it? It was like the Queen of Cups, and then I was like, okay, what do I need to back off of? And I got the Queen of Swords reverse, and I was like, I need to stop being a critical B word. Okay, let's just be a little bit nicer. And it's true, like there are some times where I don't know how to communicate things to myself or how to communicate to other people, and there are times where I know other people don't know how to communicate to me. So that's usually what it is. For me, I think everything is based in communication, even if it's communication with self or communication with the ethers or whatever it is, it's knowing how to properly and efficiently communicate that. So that's usually what I use tarot for, is just to give me little pointers of things that I may not know. It's kind of like a strategist for me, of like, even like if I know I'm gonna have like a really hard conversation with someone, I'll pull cards and be like, okay, how do I approach this? What attitude do I need to have? What energy are they gonna be in? So I know, like, don't come in guns blazing, maybe just be a little bit more tender about it. And that's helped me improve a lot of my personal relationships, which has improved my life, because for me, personal relationships are like really important. Collaboration is, and community is like huge for me, even if it's like 4 people in my life. Like even if I only have like 4 friends, those people I really want to make sure everything's good with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to talk about witchcraft a little bit, about magic. Because one of your big draws, I feel, and one of the things that makes you really special as well on Instagram, is that you work a lot with pop culture, and you use a lot of pop culture references and stuff like that. You use like sauce packs for divination. You use Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I love it. And I'm wondering, is there any certain, you know, a story or a character from pop culture that you especially use at the moment, or that gave you a lot of strength in the past or right now that you relate to deeply?
That's actually really, dang girl, you're accurate with like the good questions. Think about things. It's really interesting because I feel like pop culture is, I mean, it's always changing, obviously. It's whatever society wants. Generally, I feel like witchcraft is whatever it is that you have around you. And since we're so pop culture saturated right now, like in communication, memes, everything, like that's how we speak to each other. That's where our language has evolved. So that's why I do pop culture witchcraft. I think honestly and truly, there is no one in pop culture witchcraft where, or like pop culture where I would say like, yeah, that's an inspiration to me or whatever, because I just it's really strange. Like I love pop culture, but I don't pay attention to it really.
Yeah.
It's just whatever I pick up from like Twitter or things like that. I will say that in my entire life, there has been absolutely no person who has inspired me to keep going like Forrest Gump has. So like that type of determination, that type of energy of like, just keep doing it, dude. Like no matter what, if that man could play ping pong for the army, I can run a business. Like that's how I feel about life.
I love that. That was not the answer I expected, but
Yeah, no, people, I love doing interviews because usually like I'll answer things and people are just like, oh, okay.
This is going in a weird direction now.
Yeah, probably.
That's amazing. So, and another thing that I find very fascinating, because for me, I mostly do all of the witchy stuff online. I mean, I also have my own personal practice, but I'm not really rooted in like a local community where I live.
Yeah.
That's why it always fascinates me to see you like at Witch Walk and in your like general community that you're in. And I'm just wondering how you relate to the whole solitary versus coven thing. Like, how do you see yourself? How do you practice that?
Well, yeah, I don't like organized groups in general. I think like being raised in like the Christian faith kind of ruined that for me. So anytime there's like an organized group, I get a little weird about it. And I also hate competition. Like as a human being, I don't like it. It's not good. In my actual general area, there's not a lot of things that I can do. Like I said, I'm one of the only like spiritual practitioners. There might be like 3 other ones, and they're not to the caliber of what I do. Like they're tarot readers, you know what I mean? But they're not like they don't sell products and stuff like that. I'm not saying they're any worse than me or anything like that, but I feel like I'm a little bit more involved, I feel, in the witchcraft community in general. So it's really hard for me actually, because I have such a deep love for my community and where I grew up, even though it was kind of it wasn't the best, as like the only Asian in like a predominantly white town. Like it's not the greatest, but it's a small town and I really, really love it. And so when I started my business, I kept my prices really low so that I could do local things, because the income per capita here is like low. So I really was catering to my specific community, and it didn't really work out because the people here don't do a lot of spiritual work outside of going to church or whatever. So they don't understand the investment that is, you know, it's just not something that's the culture down here. It doesn't exist. And there's not a lot of events, and it's also very hot, so people don't go outside. So there's that. So when I found like the internet, when I was like, oh, there's witches on the internet, like that's cool. I made friends with Lacey. I went up to go see her when she opened her shop, and then whenever she did Witch Walk, she invited me and she asked if I wanted to be a vendor. And so I did that, and that's actually when I really stepped into the full role of like community and realizing that like, oh my gosh, you know, like there's not only other people that do this in the same places, but there's like businesses that are doing things together. There's like collaborations. There's like a full street fair. It was wild to me. I love the concept of community. I love the concept of collaboration, because I feel like all of us have different things to offer. And I don't think it's fair for us, out of pride or out of like being scared to work with each other or whatever, to keep other people from those resources that could come out of collaboration and working together. Obviously, as a spiritual practitioner, I am really particular with the people that I associate myself with and the people that I work with. And even as just like a business person, like a business owner, I have to be very careful about that, especially in the spiritual industry, because it's not the same as like selling a burger or whatever. Like whatever we do will impact someone's life to some certain degree. So I don't want to kind of rope somebody else into that who's not viewing that in the same way. As a solitary practitioner, I actually prefer it, because I don't have anyone going like, that's not right or whatever. In terms of community and like covens and stuff, I don't do the coven thing. Every once in a while, I'll do like an online circle, maybe if one of my friends are doing it. But I find that I really only can participate in a community that I trust. And even in our industry, which people don't realize, there are a lot of people that are not in it for the right reasons. And it's hard. And especially when you come into a community like this where you're like, oh, I finally found my people, and then you realize that even in this there's kind of garbage people, it does also still turn you off a little bit to it. So I struggle. I go back and forth with wanting to be full solitary and then wanting to be someone who leans more into the community. But like I said, I live in the middle all the time. So going back and forth isn't like the worst thing for me. It just is kind of strange because you wonder like which relationships you should really kind of put effort into and are worth it, and not even on like a business standpoint, but like as a friendship standpoint, you're just like, do I put effort into that, or is it not actually going to help me as a person or anything like that? And it's, yeah, it's really strange. It's a very strange thing. I don't know how to explain it, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand. I kind of feel the same way about it, honestly, because there's so many things in witchcraft that I feel I can only do on my own, because you sort of have to, it's your own practice, it's your own belief system.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to believe the same things or have the same practice. So it's kind of hard to find people that you can actually work with in a way that makes sense, you know?
Right. Symbiotic, and it's completely cohesive. And that's how I feel. Yeah. But the thing I do like about community is it's nice to talk to people who get you, who are in your field, who are in your like line of work, because I can tell someone like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I did like 4 clients yesterday. And they're like, oh, I get it. But if you tell like a different person who doesn't do what we do, they'd be like, you were on the phone for 3 hours. Like, why are you so tired? And it's like, dude, I'm tired. Like that's what that is. Or saying like, hey, I can't come out tonight, it's a full moon, the crazies are out, or whatever. Like, there's something to be said about not having to explain like why I'm sitting outside for no reason at 2 a.m. burning things. That's a good, I like that about my life, but really it's for convenience. It's just because I don't want to sit around and explain things to people.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So since you do past life explorations, and I feel like that's something that many people are sort of interested in but don't know how to get started with, can you talk a little bit about how you would tell people to start with it, how they can explore it?
Yeah. I always tell people that like first you want to start out where you're attracted to. So when I was really, really young, always with the ancient Egypt, always with the Vikings, always. And my mom was always looking at me like, why? Like, what is this? And after I did all my past life work, and I'm still doing it. I don't think I'll ever finish, but I realized why. I was like, oh, okay, there that is. Because when you think about it, it's like your soul is put into a body every single time that you live a life or whatever. When you're a little baby, you're fresh out the cosmos, like you're fresh out of space. So you remember things from your first life, even if your body doesn't, like your soul remembers it. The more you get into this life, the more things are replaced or things are kind of put, like in the back of the mind to be forgotten. It's like learning. It's literally like any type of anything in life, right? Like I may learn one minute how to make a cake, but then if I want to pick up a new hobby, I'm like, oh, I'll forget kind of some of that information, so I could fill it with something a little bit more useful right now. So usually things that we do as kids are kind of the muscle memory kind of leaking out of us on accident a little bit. So I always tell people, like, if you did things when you were little, or if you got some weird like attraction to something and that has no basis there, it's not like you visited there, it's not like you lived there or you were part of that culture, you're not born into it. That's usually past life stuff. That's usually something coming up to be like, hey, remember when you did this and when this was the person that you were? So I always tell people to do that. Watch your dreams, because usually a lot of past life memories come through. You can always ask your higher self, like, hey, you've lived a bunch of lives, like, let me see some. For some people, it's good for healing, obviously, because then you can see things that have come up in your past life that affect your life now. But some people are just interested in like history and want to know like what they did and who they were, which both reasons is valid. Like both reasons is like so cool to me. But yeah, generally I just tell people like research first and then get into the practice. Like for me, that's how I started. Is I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a pagan now. This is what we're going to do. And one day I sat down and I like opened up the Book of the Dead and I was like, I'm going to read this whole thing. And I did. And I took notes and whatever. And I've done it multiple times now, obviously. But I realized that I was like, these are things that I do. And so if you think about it also, like when you're little, you pick up rocks and you're like, this rock has a meaning. And then you become an adult and you have a crystal buying addiction and all of your money goes there. And kind of that's how you like do things. So it's really funny when people are like, oh, I don't know anything about my past life. And I'm like, you do. You just don't know that you know it. it's there. It's like riding a bike. You just have to realize that it's there. Or just, that's the thing too, people want to label it. So you just put a label on something that you do and be like, that's from a past life. I'm obsessed with macaroons. I'd never had them in my life. The first time I saw one, I was like, I want all of these. And I ate them all. And I was like, okay, I could either blame this on me being a sugar addict and having a sweet tooth, or I can also say like, this is from a past life. And it was like two different reasons. And you can either explain it like scientifically, logically 3D, or you can explain it 5D and then put that label on it. And that's where it came from. So past life work is generally, I like to say, pretty easy. Now, getting into like your Akashic records and all of that stuff, that's where you get into like more advanced things. And I always like to correct the belief that anyone can get into the Akashic records. Not true. Anyone can access their own, obviously, like that's your information that belongs to you. You can look at your own lives, but not everyone can like go into the Akashic records and see all the lives that I've lived. Not everyone can like get all up in your information. It's like some of us, based on the jobs we have to do, have clearance. So you can try and get into your Akashic records. You can get into your own, but I usually say that like you can do a certain amount of work for yourself, and then sometimes you've got to find other people, especially with past life work, because sometimes if you see things that are a little bit unsavory or that you are not ready for, your higher self will censor you. I have gotten into past life memories where I know I'm about to die, and it's just black. It just blacks me out, and then it'll pick up later, and I'm like, oh, okay, so you deleted that footage. I'm not allowed to see it right now. And then later when I was ready, I saw it and I realized like, yeah, the first time I looked, wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to see what I saw or feel what I felt. So also with the past life stuff, just be like everything in witchcraft, be tender with yourself, be gentle, and allow trial and error and allow pace. You don't have to know every single one of your lives right now in one spot, in one sitting, and you're not gonna. There's absolutely no way, unless you're like brand new.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what about like ancestral healing, ancestral magic? How do you work with that?
Ancestral magic is pretty much my whole life. I was not, obviously, since I wasn't raised in like a witchy household or a spiritual, energetic work household, all of the stuff I had to learn on my own. And some of it was trial and error, just figuring it out in the internet and YouTube and like you and like other people. But some of it I had to literally go into meditation and like ask my dead relatives, like, how do I do this? Show me how I do this. So like the Tiger Mom oil that I do sometimes when like the moon is right, and I don't even know, it's like I have to get permission to do it. I work with the actual spirit of my dead mother on that, and she showed me how to do it. I'd never made an oil before in my life, and she's like, this is how you do it. You do it with a double boiler, like you do it with like you're tempering chocolate basically. I was like, oh my god, I didn't know I could do this. Came out perfect the first time. It was insane. So genuinely, like, I am one of those people in the mindset of just try it, wing it, and it'll come out the way it's supposed to come out. So that's how I do a lot of my magic, is people think I'm just winging it, but really what it is I kind of just let my body go on autopilot and do, because I trust that the person steering, my higher self, has done this before, and she knows more than like my human self, who has forgotten things or like has never done it before. So that's usually how I do that. Ancestral healing, though, that is for like negative thought patterns or things that like families kind of instill. I hate to call them this, but essentially what they are like family curses that families have put on themselves. So like on both sides of my family, the biological and the adopted side, I have male subservience in my like that was part of my ancestral healing, because culturally, obviously, like if you grew up old, like how back in the day, obviously like male subservience was a thing, especially in Asian culture. That's a huge thing. And then also in the culture that my family is, which they're like conservative Christian, that is also a very big thing. So somebody started that trend of like, listen to your husband, listen to the man. So that was an issue for me, because I allow my, like, I just let my boyfriend or like whoever it is that I'm with, like, I will let them handle my finances. Not because I'm lazy or whatever. Well, it is because I'm lazy. It's not because I don't know how to do it. It's because I hate math. And I also don't want to see the shame of my own spending. But I had to realize, like, even though it's easier for me to hand that over to a man, I should just do it myself, because that's, I mean, I'm an adult. I've got to learn to do things by myself. So that was kind of what I got out of the ancestral healing. And there's a lot of things that come through that way. And ancestral healing doesn't just help you, but it helps the ancestors before you that had to deal with that, because it heals all of those wounds once the original wound is healed. And then obviously it helps your line after you, whatever kids you have or your siblings or whatever have, that's going to help them if you don't continue that negative pattern. It's like general. I feel like it's so common sense sometimes, the things that we fix, because every time I'm like, you have this ancestral trauma pattern, they're like, oh yeah, every woman in my family does do this. And I'm like, yeah, this is where it comes from. And most of the time, whenever people find out where it comes from, it's so much easier to fix. It's like crazy once you know where the root is, where to pull the weed out. It's just like, oh, okay, there we go. But people will just let go until they know where it comes from.
That's super interesting. I want to talk about mental health a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I always like asking people, you know, because witchcraft in a lot of cases, and magic and spell work, in a lot of cases, it's very, very important for our mental health, for all of us who struggle with depression, with anxiety, whatever we all struggle with, you know. And I'm just wondering if you have any like reliable practices, any daily things that you absolutely have to do in order to keep your spirits up and keep your mental health on a good level.
Yeah. What's really funny is if I don't work, I'm just like, I malfunction a little bit. So if I don't have like a client, and it doesn't have to always be clients, but if I don't have a client, or if I know like I have a full empty day, there's no way I'm getting through that day without working. And it's because this is my sole purpose. So essentially it's like, I have to feed that. I have to do something for my sole purpose every single day. So that may be just organizing my emails. It might literally be deleting my emails from my work email. It might be planning out my next menu for whenever I do that, or working on classes, or just organizing stuff, or it may be having a client. It may be like looking up new products to make or things like that. It's awful, and I sound like a Capricorn, but really, if I do not work, I might die. So there's that. But also, I always do like a check-in with myself about every month, either at the end or the beginning of the month, depends on like what's going on and how I feel. But I will always check in with myself. If I'm not checking in with myself and what I need, then my soul and my body can feel that I am completely neglecting it, and I have to keep that up, or it gets kind of bad. It gets real bad. But yeah, no, in terms of like all my stuff, it's like there are things that I do, but when I get into a space of high anxiety or depression, or my mental health is really bad, there are things that I refuse to do. I won't read cards. I won't touch a deck, because I don't want to look into whatever's stressing me out. That's going to stress me out more. I need to be able to just rely on myself. I won't take clients. I won't even speak to people sometimes, which is not the best tactic, but like it's safer for everybody. It's not just for me. Yeah, I don't have any like concrete like practices of routine that I do, because my mental health is, my highs are very high and my lows are very, very low. So I have to deal with them as they come up and as things happen. But generally, I'm like pretty cool. I just maintain like a breathing practice. Honestly, I just have to remember to breathe. And it's so simple. And like, I hate when people say like, okay, you get into something, it's like, just breathe. It's like, thanks, Karen. I'm going to go ahead and just remember to breathe when everything in my life is falling apart. But when you're not breathing, your body can't function. Your brain cannot like cognitively process everything that's going on with you. So for me, I know if I breathe, I can handle things better, because I actually know what's happening. I know what's going on. So breath work is really, really important to me. But yeah, no, there's not a bunch of things that I have as like a routine, but I'm not a like routine person.
Yeah, I like what you said about breath work, because for the longest time I felt like that too. I was like, I don't know, breath work, what's that? Like, why? And then I'm like, wait, I have a body. Like, this is a weird realization when I breathe. I'm like, oh, I'm here. I'm in this moment. I'm in physical reality, and you sort of forget that sometimes, you know, and that's what breathing helps with.
Yeah, no, I'm continually forgetting that I have like a body. What's really funny too is like I've had multiple people that have read me that are my friends that I do work with, and they're like, dude, your soul hates that you have a physical body. And I'm like, I know, it's so inconvenient. I hate that I have to go to sleep. I hate that I have to remember to eat. I hate that I have to like wash my face at night. Like, this is stupid. I literally hate it. And my soul finds it very inconvenient. My higher self is just like, oh, about a physical body.
Next time I'm doing this differently.
Yeah, we're not doing this again.
I want to talk about something else before we sign off. So you share very openly about your addictions on Instagram. I've seen quite a few posts of yours about that. And I asked you beforehand if you would be open to talking about this, and you said, yeah. So I think there's so much that people can learn from hearing about other people's paths, and, you know, not seeing that everyone is all perfectly put together, that things get rough sometimes. And I'm just wondering, like, if you can share a little bit about your history with addiction, what it was like for you, what recovery is like for you.
Yeah, so I, as a human being, have a very addictive personality. I'm like 0 to 100 on about everything. Yeah, like when I started doing makeup, I was like, I want all the makeup. I bought all the makeup. I bought everything. And like when I start like cooking or whatever, I'm gonna go 0 to 100. I'm not gonna learn how to make muffins. I'm making like full on bread. So everything that I do is like that. Also, I I don't like blaming everything on astrology, but it helps explain things. So like I have a Gemini moon, and with the Sagittarian thing, that like arrow shooting forward is all escapism. That's one of my biggest things, is like I just like to escape shit. Like, and it's not necessarily because I can't deal with it, but sometimes it's because it's boring, or sometimes I need to feel stimulation. Like this happened to me. I'll say addiction started for me very, very early, and it wasn't always substances. Like when I was younger, I was addicted to like drama. Like I was always in people's drama, like not necessarily like making it or whatever, but I was always like, what's going on? Like what's happening? Because it was more interesting than whatever was going on with me. Obviously, as I got older and I had access to more things and more people, and you know, life kind of broadened a little bit, I found different ways that were not good. Because I was Christian, like growing up, it's a very strict kind of upbringing. So it wasn't the like how they have parents who will drink around their kids and be like, this is alcohol, like this is what it is, don't go crazy, don't go wild. And they always say that like strict parents breed sneaky kids, which is very true. Because I am a hack man now, I can do so many crazy things. But it was that upbringing that kind of kept me of like, okay, if I'm going to do what I want, I have to hide everything. So I was addicted at some point to like secrets too. And it was my own. When I was younger, I didn't, like in high school, it was really, really bad for me. I had really bad depression. And I started skipping school. I was drinking a lot in high school, which is really crazy because my family is dry. So I would have like friends get alcohol for me, and then I would like hide it. And I remember towards the end of like honestly, like my senior year, I was so depressed that I was like drinking at school. We had like my last period, I was a TA, and I would get these like cups from like the local whatever shop, and I would put alcohol in them, and I would take them to school. And at this point, I'm like, I know people knew that. Like I thought I was so slick, but I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can't do that anymore. I went off to college. I drank a lot, and I started smoking a lot. My escapism isn't just like substances though. Like it does really translate sometimes to running. Like I ran away when I was little, because I didn't know how to cope with my depression and my anxiety, and the way that I was raised, we didn't talk about mental health. It wasn't something that was important or acknowledged even. It was like a pray it away type of thing, which is like, yeah, I can't really pray away the chemicals that cause me to be depressed. But whenever I got to a point where I was in control, I was never given the tools to be in control responsibly, because someone else was always in control. It was always like my mom being like, this is what you are and aren't going to do and whatever. So when I was left to my own devices, it was awful. It was so dumb and it was so bad. I grew up very insecure too. I was so insecure, and sometimes I still kind of struggle with that. So the alcohol and when I started doing cocaine, that made me more fun. It made me more interesting. It made me a little bit more ready to be open and a little less standoffish. It made me a little less angry too, because I was still mad, and it made me a kind of a nicer person a little bit, or I thought it did. And that's kind of where I was coming from that. So it wasn't necessarily that I was addicted to the substance or like the way it made me feel bodily, but it was more like the life that I felt like I was living, you know, like that person that I thought that I was, who I thought was so interesting and so fun and so cool. So addiction was really interesting because as a human being, I am like, obviously you can tell, like, I'm not dumb. Like I am intelligent. I love things that like smart people love. Like I'm really, really smart. And so growing up, I was just like, and going through the addiction stuff, I was like, damn, you know, like I'm a smart person. Why do I have to do this? And why do I feel like I need to do this? So there was always just a little bit of self-loathing that came with everything and every single whatever. For me, alcohol is not really a big deal because I'm like, whatever about that. Like, I just like to drink with my friends and I like alcohol as an art. But when like drugs popped up, like the cocaine wasn't the first thing that I'd ever done. When I was like in high school and coming a little bit out of it, I really loved pills. Like I loved like Xanax and like painkillers and stuff like that. I have a history of that in my family, my adopted family. And that was how I saw a couple people kind of cope with their problems. And at some point when I kind of got my hands on it, I was like, you know, obviously I know this is bad. Like I saw the way it ruined my family, but I was like, they seem to be getting something out of it. So let's try it. And then the minute I did it, I was like, oh, I knew it. And then the minute somebody put cocaine in front of me, I was like I had that foresight. I just knew it. And I was like, this is going to be bad. And I was naive enough and I was stubborn enough to think that I had the self-control to be like, oh no, I won't be, you know, one of those people or whatever. And then the people that were doing it were people that I knew that were like cooler and had better reputations. They had access to like better social gatherings and things like that. So for me at that point, obviously like social things were so important, and the smaller the town is, the more your reputation means something and all of that. So as I did it for about 3 years, cocaine, I did it for a very long time. Off and on, I would go like 3 or 4 months without doing it. And then I'd be like, oh, you know, like I've been so good. And like, maybe I could just do a little bit, or I would do it at a party. And then I would just go. And I knew the minute that I knew where to get it, I was like, fucked. There we go. So for a while it was fine. I was functioning because it's not one of the drugs that like slows you down. It's like your mental process is just fire a little bit faster. It was like go, go, go. It made things exciting. So I used to only do it like at parties, and then I used to only do it sometimes like at home, and then I would do it like I was doing it at work at one point. I lost one job from it. Another one, I lost my job, but it was just weird. But it was like the cocaine played into it just a little bit, and also just I hated that job, and I was like, I'm not going to be a secretary forever. That and it was weird because I had this like whole secret life or whatever. Like there were a couple people knew that I did it or that I had done it at some point, but I don't think anyone in my life at one point ever knew like how much I had done it and how much it actually was impacting my life. I think people just thought I was being stupid, like a stupid kid and like making bad mistakes. And it was drugs. Like that's what it was. And so eventually it had just ruined my life enough. And it wasn't like it ruined my life in terms of like my whole life was ruined, but you know, the universe sends you signs when you're supposed to stop doing things, and then if you don't stop doing it, the signs are worse and worse and the consequences are worse and worse. That kept happening to me. And I remember I was sitting because I'd gotten a DUI like when I was like 20, and then 3 years later I was still dealing with issues with that because the cocaine made me be like, oh, irresponsible. I was like, I don't need to go to court. I don't need to go do all these things that I need to do or whatever. So I remember sitting there because I had let my license expire, and I got pulled over because I was driving and I had just done coke, and I was like, oh, you know, like I'm just gonna whatever. And I was on my phone and I was being reckless just because I was on my phone. I wasn't like swerving or anything. I was just acting dumb. I wasn't thinking. I got pulled over and I was like, oh crap, I let my license expire. And because it was a suspended license from a DUI, they were like, we have to take you in. I was like, God damn it, it's fine, whatever. Like, I know, it's okay. I'm so like chill about things like that because I got myself into it. Like, what am I gonna do, cry about something I did to myself? Like, no.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting there and I was like, oh, yeah, I gotta stop doing this. Because I had made all the correlations of bad things were only happening in the periods of time where I was doing drugs. And when I was like out of control. And as soon as I stopped doing it, my life just vastly improved. I leaned more into my business and more into my spirituality. And I was like, look, I'm going to replace this with this. I'm going to put myself into my passion and let that excite me instead of some external source. And the people that I love were helpful to the extent that they could be with the information that they had. But that was a process that I really just shouldered on myself, and I didn't ask for help. I didn't look for help. That was like pure willpower. And now like recovery it's still hard. Like I don't ever go a day where I don't remember that I did that. I don't ever go a day where like sometimes even I'll look at like a bottle of wine and I'm like, do I want that? Or am I bored? Am I trying to not deal with my problems? Or am I actually like fine and can I like have a glass of wine? I always have to check in with myself whenever anything like that happens. Like I've been at parties and stuff where it showed up, and I've been at bars and stuff where it showed up too. And I've had a couple slip ups, but after every single time that I do it, I feel like trash. And I'm like, this is gross. My body, I don't want this. And the older that I've gotten, the less fun it is when you wake up in the morning. It's just, I don't like that anymore. But yeah, it's some days it's harder than others. Some days I do think about it. I still have numbers in my phone where I could probably get it, but I realized that like I've built so much, and God, if my own health isn't what should be my fuel for like not being a jerk to myself, it's got to be my business. It's got to be all these people that I want to help, and I can't be doing dumb shit if I'm trying to help people live their lives better. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Every once in a while I'll watch a TV show and it's on there and I'm like, oh, that was fun. And then it'll just move on and I'm like, okay, whatever, it's fine. I never like look at something and like crave it and go like, oh, I need it. I never think about it and miss it to the extent where I will actually go find it or anything like that. But it's a part of my life and it's a part of me. And obviously any type of chemical that you put in your body changes you to some extent. So I'll say now it's a little bit harder for me to focus on things, and I always need to be stimulated a little bit more now, and I just have to work with that and the consequences of the decisions that I've made. But yeah, no, I don't ever think anyone should not talk about that stuff. Obviously, the comfortability and the vulnerability for every person is different, but for me, like, because I'm generally a smart person, and because I pretty much have my shit together, like mostly, and I run a business, and I also have like this big personality that's so on fire all the time. People don't really think that like those are the extent of the mistakes that I've made. People think that like what my biggest mistake was like skipping school and like getting an F on something. I'm like, no, dude, I've been to jail. Like, it was for 4 hours, but like still, it's things like that. So I think it's really important because then you get to see all the facets of different people and the places that they come from, and that life is hard for everyone in different ways, and it just depends on whatever way that is for you. And yeah, for me, drugs are hard. For other people, it might not be drugs, it might be food, but the way that it holds you in your life is exactly the same.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That was really meaningful, and I feel like, you know, it's really good that you haven't developed a huge resistance to it, where if you feel that urge, you know, and you reflect about why it's there. Because the moment you start saying to yourself, oh, I should not do that for this and this and this and this reason, and you get more and more resistance, like, why am I even having these thoughts? Then you get into a really problematic cycle. You just have to be like, yes, this is an issue that I have, and I can deal with it in this way, this way, this way. And then you have more control over it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really important, stuff like that. And when those things come up, it's really important to give them attention. Like, even if it's your feelings or your emotions or whatever, like negative thought patterns, whatever it is, if it comes up, it needs to be looked at. And the more you push it down, the more it's going to be like, hey, hello, I'm here. Like, don't ignore me. So I just like to save myself some time and just address it when it comes up.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I have quite an addictive personality myself, which luckily I never had like the contacts or the social network for it to develop into anything that was actually bad. But my brain definitely works like that, where I'm like, if something is fun, my brain is like, why would I stop this? Is there a reason?
What's wrong? I'm enjoying this. There's no reason not to do it.
Yeah. For me, it's more like that I get addicted to certain people or certain energies, and I want to be with them all the time. I was definitely addicted to video games, no question. And yeah, it's just something that you have to deal with, and something that you have to acknowledge about yourself, that you have this tendency, and make sure that you kind of keep yourself in check. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course. I never shy away from talking about it. There's always something valuable no matter if it like
Yeah.
hurts me a little to talk about, or if it's like mildly embarrassing, like what, who cares? I'm
Yeah.
a witch. I talk to dead people. Nothing can embarrass me anymore. I talk in public to myself. What, drugs? Okay.
But yeah, so I want to ask you before I let you go, one more question. I also asked Kellyanne this, and I kind of got this from a different podcast. I love that she always asks this question because you've reached a certain success in your life. You know, you are doing basically your sole purpose on a daily basis, full time. You can live off of it. And I'm wondering if the success that you've achieved looked the way that you thought it would, or if your path to this success looked the way you thought it would.
No, not in any way, shape, or form. It's just, it blows my mind. Sometimes I think about it and I'm like, how the frick? That's how you know though that like you're supposed to be doing it and that the universe approves is when things like freakily work out. Because like for me, I started my business 2 years ago. I'm already teaching classes. I have already raised my prices like 2 times. I recently had someone who was like, you need to double your prices. This is ridiculous. And I was like, yeah, I know, like, don't yell at me. So to be able to get to that point, right, and do interviews with people and for people to care about what I say, like, I think that's crazy. And then with me as a Sagittarian, like we have that Jupiterian luck of like things, just opportunities and things falling in our lap. So I'm very grateful for that, for like just my natural whatever, because like I'll be honest, like I can attribute a lot of my success to my social network and to the people that are in my like my circle of friends and my business network. Like I guarantee you I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if it wasn't for Witch Walk, to be able to go do that and to be able to network with those amazing witches and with everybody like that. It's really funny because people like to go like, oh, you know, like, do you feel like you wasted your time doing all those other jobs? I've been a teacher, I've been a bartender, I was a Sunday school teacher, right? Like I was a barista, a graphic and web designer. Like I used to work for like Google and Bumble. And I think about it now and I'm like, yeah, because like obviously graphic design, like I can do my own stuff now. I don't need anyone else to do that. I'm fine now with dealing with customer service issues and things like that. I wouldn't have learned that unless I was a barista, especially with very particular people. I wouldn't even know how to like command authority if I didn't teach third and fourth graders how to fucking play on computers and stuff. So I didn't think it would look like this, but I'm not surprised at the way it unfolded. It makes a lot of sense and I can see where all the dots connected. I can see where everything happened, but God, at the end of it, I'm just like, how did we get here? It's like when you blink and you're like, hi, hello. And your life is just completely different. So yeah, if you would have asked me like 2 years ago where I would be, I would probably tell you still working a normal job and like on the side doing card readings. And now here I am literally paying all my bills, just talking to people on the phone and like messing with their energy and stuff like that. Just so cool. It's just crazy. It's really, really crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's like everything kind of prepared you for what is happening now. That's really cool. And so the last question I want to ask you is there anything that you want to share that you're currently working on, what your path is holding, what's coming up, anything you want people to know?
Well, there's some things I can't talk about, which is crazy because I never thought I'd ever say that, right? Like I never thought I'd be like, oh, I can't tell you guys stuff. But no, yeah. My new classes that I'm doing with Sarah and stuff, I'm really stepping into that role of an educator, which I love. I really love that. I love teaching people new things. I think it's really cool. So the Pillows and Portals class is amazing. It's been such a good run and we're going to keep doing that. We're going to do different levels. So if people want to learn how to do dream work or like more advanced energy work techniques, that would be it. I'm going to be offering a lot of classes this year. Those are kind of more fun for me than some of the other stuff that I do. I like it. So that, and and the new thing that I'm doing, the email subscriptions, those are really, really cool. And it's going to cut out some time from my Tarot Tuesdays. But yeah, Tarot Tuesdays, that kind of stuff. I can't really say a lot. And also, I'm also one of those people that I'll come up with an idea and like it'll be in action in like 3 days. So I don't really plan that many things out.
Yeah.
I think my business is going to a place where it's going to be a lot more accessible in terms of like products for like take home magic and things like that. And like my ancestor tea kit is so crazy. I've had so many people be like, this is wild. And it's tea. And I think that's really, really cool. So that, and yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know where my business is going to go. So we're going to figure that out at the same time.
That's awesome. Thank you so, so much for being here, for sitting with me, and for sharing so openly. I'm really, really happy that we got to do this. And I think a lot of people are going to take a lot from this. I'm really excited to upload this.
I'm so glad. Thank you for having me. This is like a dream. And I've always wanted to like, dude, it's so funny where like, obviously I don't feel like this isn't the same as like meeting you in person, but this is just like a little bit better than like Instagram comments and messages.
Yeah. I mean, in case anyone doesn't know, this is actually the first time we're speaking to each other directly. Oh my gosh. So it's very interesting. Yeah, it was the same with Kellyanne as well. It was the first time I spoke to her directly. So it was crazy. Yeah, so I'm going to put a few links down below, obviously, to your Instagram, to your shop, to your classes, so everyone can follow you. And yeah, you have so many cool offerings, I feel like,
Thanks.
because like the whole like ancestor thing and the past life thing, it's also, yeah, I don't know. I think it all makes sense. You know, everyone can see how it fits you and how it fits your talents. And that's really cool.
Yeah, I've been, it's just really strange the way that my menu has evolved, right? I went from like tarot readings for love and stuff to like, hey, let me talk to your dead people. Let me mess with your chakras and stuff. I think it's like really crazy. But now that I look at my new menu, I'm like, this is my actual menu. I don't think that like any other menu I've had before has really been on point the way this one has. I'm real proud of it. I think it's going to stay for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so thank you so much. For all of the viewers out there, if you want to, you can share in the comments what you liked about this, what you learned, what inspired you, what made you happy about this, or whatever you want to type. And yes, I look forward to more interviews in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here, TJ, and goodbye.